This week, I'll be analyzing the most important parts of the Demon Slayer art style, focusing primarily on the manga version, but also including some snippets from the anime as well. As usual, it's important we set goals when doing art studies. Pick the aspects we want to focus on the most. In my case, I really like the line art, eyes, and coloring of the art style, and I've been interested in coloring in black and white like manga for a while, so this Demon Slayer study just feels like the perfect opportunity. First, we'll take a look at the proportions and stylization of the anatomy. For the most part, the shapes of the face and proportions of everything follow one of the more popular anime styles. The face between the eyes and the nose is generally longer than the top and bottom of the face, giving room for much bigger eyes. The eyes are generally spaced around 3/4 to a full eye width apart depending on the eye design, which leads into one of the most, if not the most important part of the style, in my opinion, which is the eyes. Demon Slayer is one of the few animes where I could easily tell a character apart solely from their eyes, even if it's in black and white. When it comes to main characters, each have a rather unique design. Some general eye shapes get reused with slight variations, but for the most part, they're each very unique. The pupils and irises also vary a lot. Some are simple 1 to 3 color variants, others have unique shapes going on inside, and some don't have anything at all. You'll also notice that the eyes aren't pure circles and ovals, but rather in the shape of a circle or oval through the use of jagged lines, creating a blocky and jagged look. Following the eyes, the eyebrows also vary a decent amount in shapes, so feel free to mess a lot with those. Next is the nose, which I think everyone knows that Demon Slayer has quite a pointy nose. Interestingly, I would say the manga version has a slightly less pointy nose, while the anime version has a really pointy nose. Sometimes when the face is angled, they'll have the nose more defined and connected to the eyebrow, while other times they'll use the very basic nub for a nose that a lot of anime uses nowadays. And for front views, it's often the nostrils and maybe some lines to give the nose some more definition and shape. Moving on to ears, they're quite chubby, I guess you could say, and feel very well defined. It's not uncommon to see ears with minimal detail, but in this case, in the manga, they really do include a lot of detail inside the ear. The anime version does a bit too, but not to the same degree. So I recommend doing some studies on the anatomy of an ear. We'll skip over the mouth since it's honestly pretty similar to the standard anime mouth style, and move on to the hair, which can come in some unique designs. But most importantly, like everything else about the style, the shape of the hair is often very jagged and sharp rather than smooth, curved lines. They'll also include many little lines inside the hair to further define its shape and dimensions. For the rest of the body, it's kind of standard anime, but with some few caveats. The width of the neck will vary by character, some being thicker or thinner than others, but you may notice the bodies being a bit stocky looking. I think part of this is because the legs are often seen with quite puffy pants, making them seem larger than normal, but also because the legs or bottom half of the body are often longer than the top half, and by a decent amount, instead of the more traditional 50-50 split. Also, even though most of the style uses pretty sharp, jagged lines, when it comes to the actual body or muscles of the body, they're actually pretty round. The last thing I'll point out is the hands, which seem to be a bit thicker and lean more towards realism than your typical really heavily styled hands in anime. For line art, I'd say it leans more towards the clean side, not really any messy strokes left over, and also it often is not complete, so there's lots of breaks between the lines. Another important part is a line width variations. You'll often see in line art where things like where lines overlap will be a bit thicker to appear darker, which helps give it depth, but in Demon Slayer, variations in the line width happen really all over the place, but primarily in the outline of the character. Instead of consistently making the character outline a bit thicker than the inside details, the width of the character's outline will vary from thick to thin in a way that I don't believe seems to follow a clear pattern or set rules. It is possible they're using a G-pen brush and adding the thickness manually later on, but I believe they're probably using something like this brush, which automatically adjusts the thickness of the line art based on the direction of the pen. I actually started my master copy with the G-pen before switching to this brush and finding it to work better. Alright, since we're focusing on the manga, I actually wasn't sure what to put in the rendering phase, since I guess you could count all of it as line art, but there are two main things I decided to put inside rendering. Before saying what they are, I just want to point out that the manga actually includes very minimal shading, primarily using just pure blacks and some minimal hatching to display any sort of lighting. But okay, anyways, the first part will be the black fills. Parts of the character that we want to be dark like hair or clothing is often simply just filled in with pure black. Then, to bring back some definitions and details, the line art within the black is often converted to be white instead. This even happens on parts of the outline of the character sometimes, especially in cases where they may have black hair or maybe clothes against a dark background, so they don't get too lost in the piece. As I said earlier, some places will also use hatching to appear darker, but the hatching is usually very minimal. If it's a major panel or intense lighting, then this hatching is often much more intense and can follow a thick white outline, when we want light to appear strong and bright. Moments like this is also one of the times you'll see gray line art being mixed in to make the blend between pure white and black not as intense. The final thing I wanted to include is that sometimes when something overlaps with the character, especially if it's overlapping in a spot of pure black, it'll have a white outline and then a fuzzy transition to smooth it out. The fuzzy transition could honestly be replicated with a lot of brushes, but I recommend looking in the painting sections of whatever your art program is, and maybe something along the gouache or acrylic brush type. And lastly, a tip for the anime style is the hair, which is pretty often made up of 2 tones rather than just one. Alright, before we move on to the master size and implementation, I just wanted to say that the next art study poll is live. In last week's poll, gachiakuta won, so that'll be the next video. And for this week, you can vote for Rinse Period Art, Artisol, Lavender Town, and Bungo Stray Dogs. So if you're interested in more art style studies, please make sure to subscribe, leave your recommendations in the comments below, and head over to the post tabs on my channel to vote.